I believe relationship is more important than the skill set. Like you can teach pretty much anybody to do anything. You can teach a monkey to play a piano, but it doesn't mean that like if you hire an EA that is like polar opposite of you as a person and they make you nuts when you talk to them and like every time they call you or text you, you're like skin crawls, that's not going to work. But if you find somebody that like maybe understands how email works and like a little bit of calendar stuff, like I can teach them the rest. But if you like them as a person, that's the most important part.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Eat, Sleep, and Invest. I'm your host, Brian Driscoll, and I'm here with Jen Delamotte-Jones. What's going on, Jen?
Hey there. Excited to be here.
Jen, give everybody a little background on what you do and how you got into this.
Yeah. So I own a company called The Kick Assistant, and I founded it in 2022. For the last 12 years, I was the EA supporting Trevor Mock of Carrot. In that job, he had me jumping in and helping a bunch of our clients, talking them through how to like work better with their assistant to, really foster better relationships there and just how to use us. I had really seen a trend of underutilization of assistants where we were being treated like secretaries or receptionists and recognized that it needed to be like really dialed in more with some people to see like, this is why you're not getting the results you want. So I started speaking at some of the Carrot events, and from there had a bunch of the clients reaching out to me asking if I would talk to their assistants or talk to them one-on-one and kind of do some coaching with them on the side. And it became like this weird little side hustle I was doing while I was working at Carrot. And it kept growing. I kept getting more and more clients that heard I was doing it. I wasn't really promoting it or anything. It just kind of kept happening. And I kind of took it and just ran with it in January of this year, took it full time, walked away from my job at Carrot. So now we do that. And since we left that, we also kind of stepped into the recruiting game too. So now we were for like a year helping people kind of walk through the process of how to hire. Like these are the steps you should take. But then in January, when we opened up more time, decided that it was a good idea to actually make that part of what we offered. So now we do that like a full done for you hiring service also.
I met you, it's got to have been like, I don't know, 2-3 years at Carrot Camp.
Yeah. And it had to have been at least 3 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah. And I always remember, I'm like, you know what? I need an assistant, but I don't know what they would do. I'm like, Trevor's so lucky because Jen's like on the ball, It was interesting because then I saw you promoting your new venture. Basically, it's like a fractional EA and then matchmaking service.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yes, I saw that. I'm like, you know what? That's pretty cool. And I reached out to Jen. I'm like, hey, Jen, what are you doing now? And you explain, you're like, hey, I'll follow you around and I'll tell you what you need, like where EAs can help you. Because that was my struggle. Remember, like when we were working, I'm like, I don't know. I know I do a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know where I could get help.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really common thing. Like a lot of executives, like I said, going back to that idea where a lot of us are seen more as like, it's like the 1950s and we're secretaries, or it's the opposite. And they're like, oh, an assistant is like a personal assistant that's going to get me coffee and get me lunch. And like, they can't really see beyond those two small scopes of what we actually do. And I mean, you've seen it now and you have, Rebecca now in place, your full-time EA that she's killing it, right? She's in there and, you find a really good, solid, proactive partner that can really change the game for you, that really, pulls things out of what you need instead of sitting back reactively waiting for you to tell them, this is what I need from you. We're out there pulling out your priorities with you, helping you figure out what you need to do, where you need to be, where your focus should be, how to, keep you out of the weeds. And a good EA is really good at those things, being more proactive and helping kind of move the needle forward, which is pretty cool to really see that happen and to unlock some of these EAs to do that more.
Yeah. So let's do this first. If you don't mind, let's define what an EA is. So just because there's different things, like let's define, okay, what should people be expecting when they look for an EA?
Yeah. It's funny because if you talk to a group of EAs, I've always heard, most EAs talk about how they think that most executives probably want somebody that's organized and loyal and confidential. And those are things like, you all want that. Like we as executives, we want that. That's true. But realistically, what most executives are really looking for is more of a clone of themselves. They want somebody that's more of like who they are, but maybe a more organized version of themselves. Because most, and I'm saying that lightly because I know you're not as much that way, but most executives are more of like this visionary mentality that's like kind of scatters their brain and they're all over the place. Like squirrel, what is this idea over here? And there's something shiny on that side. And like, and so it's like, we kind of keep them in check, right? Like that's what EAs are good at. So, it's interesting though, because I think that's a big gap is that a lot of EAs think, it's all about organization, but realistically, like to be that more strategic level partner, we need to learn to think more like an executive and to be able to step into that role more and think more the way that you guys do to be able to like help you move your needle forward where you want to go.
Yeah. And you know what? That's interesting too, because I think everyone tries to delegate too early. I don't know, without giving the information. So I found, like, even with you, it's like, hey, you know what? Just hop on my calls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what I even do, because there's no way I can assume people know what I'm talking about and what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Bringing someone in that doesn't know, it's like, you just got to follow someone around for like a month.
Yep. And it's scary, right? Like there's some things that are really scary about, like a lot of executives really struggle with the trust cycle, I guess. It's like figuring out how deep you can trust this person into your life. Like a lot of them have trouble delegating out things like their inbox. It feels like such a secret, sacred place to be. And then, this person comes in and has like free control over it. And it's a little scary. But I always say that I feel like the inbox is almost like a window to your soul, right? Like that's so much your business is ran and operated through it. You can figure out like the way that you communicate with people, how you sound when you talk to people, who are important to you, what businesses, like what things you're watching, like because you'll sign up for newsletters or just various websites that you go to that you check out. So it's like we as EAs can really learn about who you are by just watching your inbox. And I also think like another step that I've been doing lately that I think is really cool is to actually step into like even the sent emails and read through some of the emails that the executives are sending out, because then you can really see how they communicate with other people, how they are acting, as opposed to just watching the inbox itself, like actually digging in and taking like a real deep dive into it.
And you're right too, because the inbox, I never realized how personal an inbox was until I had somebody that had access to it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is like personal things in here.
Oh yeah,
so you're right. There is a comfort zone there.
Mm-hmm.
That some people might, like me, I don't really care, but some people, I could see that being an issue.
There's a couple stories. Like I had a carrot camper one time at one of the carrot camp events. I was trying to get him to like get his EA into his inbox. And he's like, but I'm a single guy. It's not just business stuff that's in there. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we need to figure a workaround around that. But then or another time, like, even with Trevor, we had, we were doing, it was like, I don't know, it was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night one night. He sends me this text and he's like, you're going to see something weird that I bought on Amazon come in. It was a gag gift, like, don't. And so it's like, the idea that he knew I was going to see it kind of freaked him out, because he's like, she's going to see this. And we don't need to talk about what that was, but it was something really funny. And it was like a gag gift for his family, but it made me laugh because if I had seen it come in, I would have been like, what the heck? Why is he buying this? But
yeah.
It's totally, but I wouldn't have asked because that's EA confidentiality. You just, okay, that's interesting.
Right. But you are but like even me, like if someone's in my inbox, it's like some things can be seen. And if you don't have the context behind it, like, whoa, this is kind of weird.
Definitely. So having more of those conversations and having like that open flow of communication between your EA and yourself is so important. Like I'm a big believer in big communication. The more we can talk, the more we connect, the better that I'm going to be able to do my job. We see it all the time where we have like clients that complain that they're not working well with their assistant. Like my assistant's not doing the things I want them to do. And it really always, like I would say 98% of the time comes down to communication. And I'm like, well, how often are you guys meeting? Well, our meetings keep being canceled. Okay, but why is that? And like really figuring out the problem, because what it needs to be is like sacred time. If you schedule it with your EA, it needs to happen. Now I get it that there are times where you're going to have like sick days or you're going to be on vacation or things like that. But it's like, there's workarounds around that too. But we need to like really make sure that the time with your EA is sacred and you stick to it. Otherwise, you're not going to see the results that you hope to see from this relationship. And then you're going to think it doesn't work.
Right. And you're right on the communication, because I'm pretty direct in like the way I communicate. And I think it's important too, that it's like bringing someone on, you have to put it up front. It's like, hey, I'm going to be direct with you. You be direct with me, because it doesn't help you say your EA is doing something. You're like, that's not really how I'd like to do it, but you let it go. It's just going to escalate. Or even they don't like a way you do something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a good back and forth. It's like, you know what? Hey, you're doing this. This is how I would normally do it. Bring it up immediately versus just letting things drag on. Because then you get into the situation. It's like, they just don't get me and they're not doing what I'm looking for. It's mainly because you're not telling them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, it's, especially if you bring in a seasoned EA, it's funny because there's two sides of this coin. Like you have like really good EAs who have been in the business for a long time that really know their shit and like are, doing things well. And they're fun to work with for me because it's almost like a peer-to-peer level thing. Like I know things they don't know, and I'm excited to share some of these ideas and tips and things that I've picked up along the way with them. But at the same time, like I can get a lot out of them too, because they've really, been in it for a long time and they know some cool things and they use different tools tools than I do. But that also makes it really difficult sometimes for us to teach them some of the tools we have because they already have an inbox handling system or they already have, you know what I mean? Like they've already done these things. So it's like trying to teach them. I have a client she was an EA for like very corporate level companies in New York City. And she had like 3 executives that she supported in like, Fortune 500 companies, like really big deal things. And she transitioned to working for like more of like a solopreneur, real estate investor, smaller business. I mean, it's just like a 3-people shop. It's very small. And so she transitioned from that, like this big corporate world job to that. And she's like a killer EA, like she's fantastic, but she really does not understand the startup business world. So being able to like really dig in with her and teach her the difference between what she knows and what she thinks she knows is pretty cool because she had all these systems and processes that worked well for corporations, but not as well for smaller businesses. And so being able to like really dig in with that with her is different. And it's interesting because you see that with assistants where they're that way or they're really green and then they're like less confident. But at the same time, they tend to be more like sponges, more willing to absorb all these things that were, because it's like, I believe that the relationship is more important than the skill set. Like you can teach pretty much anybody to do anything, right? Like you can teach a monkey to play a piano, but it doesn't mean that like, that EA, if you hire an EA that is like, the polar opposite of you as a person and they make you nuts when you talk to them. And like every time they call you or text you, your like skin crawls, that's not going to work. But if you find somebody that like maybe understands how email works and like a little bit of calendar stuff, like I can teach them the rest. But if you like them as a person, that's the most important part.
Okay. So say, for example, me, when you and I started, I reached out to you like, hey, Jen, I don't know what's going on. Tell everybody, because I'm similar to most, maybe not similar to most entrepreneurs, but I think I am with, I don't know what I need help with because I think people relate to that. And I think you can word it better than I can.
Yeah. So like the idea of like, okay, so
like what was it like? What were my problems and how do we do the process?
Yeah. I mean, most executives, like I said, really go into thinking like, it's hard to figure out what an EA can really do for you because like you sit there and you think like, okay, like they'll take my phone calls. I really don't take a lot of phone calls. It's, 2024, who's still answering the phone? Like there's so much more to it than that though. Obviously we do manage inboxes and going through and really setting up good processes around there that work well. I'm not like a cookie cutter believer. Like I don't think that every system is going to work the same for everybody else. Like we have to find a good system that'll work for you that you can stick with long term. So digging in and figuring out what that looked like. I mean, like we went through and we did like an overhaul in your inbox and it was kind of like a shitstorm. It did not work well, right? It was not good. So we had to go back through and we had to fix it and figure out like ways that, and I've talked to Rebecca about it too. Like, okay, like, so you need to figure out better processes and systems, like start from scratch, erase everything and just really dig in. But it's like finding what works for the executive is where it really comes in. So that's one part. And honestly, the inbox is probably the biggest first step. And then from there, it's like really like dialing in the calendar. And that really goes further back than just like, okay, like let's put stuff on the calendar and like, let's organize things. Like I believe that you should go through and you should color code things and organize it that way. So it makes sense. So it's visually easier to look at. So like when you look at your calendar now, like, okay, like there are dark blue things and those means I'm going to be on a podcast, or like if it's orange, it means I'm going to travel. Like you can see it by just looking at it without having to like really put a lot of thought into it now, which is cool. But then being able to like take it even a step further and saying like, okay, what do I want my week to look like? And working that backwards with your EA to really figure out like what the perfect week could really look like for you. And like going through and like mapping that out and aligning there, because then they can step in. And like, I think the key piece of an EA that like most people don't realize is that, like I kind of made a joke about it before, but it's like keeping us on point, like keeping us on track to know what our priorities are, what we should be focusing on, and how to stay on those. And that really comes with the perfect week, because then once you can align your priorities and figure out what your priorities are with your EA, you can go back through and you can actually like put those on the calendar, and they can kind of manage those for you and make sure that they keep you on track, that they, do the things like remind you that you have to, prepare for an event next week, or they can set you up with like slide decks and research and information. And that's another really big thing is research. Like a lot of EAs, like a lot of people don't realize, executives like love doing research and I don't think they love it. They just do it a lot. They do a lot of research to figure out like, learning about new software or learning about a new program or a new, whatever they want to dig into and learn more about. Like we all do it. You go into these like rabbit holes too, right? And suddenly it's like half your day is in like researching this thing that you're looking at that you were like, oh, I'll spend 5 minutes, but your EA could do it and come back and teach you about it. And that's like a huge thing to me, is like letting your EA go. Like the more that we can give them the confidence and like the ownership over certain things, the better they're going to be at their job. So the more even like little things like that, like go research this and come back to me, like the more of those things you give them to do, the better they're just going to get better and better and really learn who you are and what you want out of things more often.
Yeah, and you're right. Even small things like coming up with a slide deck. So I'm working with Rebecca right now. I'm like, hey, I got to go present. Actually, do you know what I'm presenting on?
No.
I'm presenting on the importance of making a work with you document. So I'm going to give you a plug there too.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Cool. But I was like, hey, here's what I want to present because I'm always talking about marketing. Like anytime I present, I'm talking about marketing. I'm going to Collective Genius, so I'm presenting there. And it's like, I'm like, okay, let's think of something that can help people other than marketing, you know? And that's one thing that's helped me. So I figure I can share that. And it's like, so I give that to Rebecca. I'm like, hey, here's what it is. Can you break this out into slides? Even if she doesn't have much experience in slides, it's like she breaks it out and it saves me like 80% of the work. And I just get to come back in and tweak them.
Yep. Well, and that's really that like 10-80-10 principle, right? Like really going in and letting her do, like you do the first 10%, she does the middle 80%. And then like in the first 10% is you telling her the need. And then she goes in and does the middle, like main part of the work. And then you clean it up at the end. Like it's pretty cool. Right.
Which that's important too. Anybody looking for an EA, you need to spend the first 10% of time explaining what you want, not just go put slides together. It's like, okay, can you go put these together? Here's the outcome I'm looking for. Here's what it is. Here's the objective. And like really lay it out and give people what they need to come back to you with something good.
On that same side, the EA needs to be better at asking the right questions. And as time goes on, they'll really figure out what those questions are for you. You know, like when I was supporting Trevor at Carrot, like I had a list of like 5 questions that I'd ask him, you know, around specific things. Like these are the questions I know that like if we're working on, you know, a slide deck, like I need to ask these specific questions. Or if we're working on, you know, a flyer for an event, like these are questions I need to ask. Like what is he really looking for? Because it's like you have in your, like I remember doing things like when I first started working for him, we used to run this group called the Young Entrepreneur Society. And I would make the flyers for the event and like promote all the event. And I did all the work to try to get people there. But when I first started, you know, he'd be like, this is what we're going to talk about. Like, this is who's coming, you know, make the flyer for it. I really don't care what it looks like. And because I didn't know him well enough, I was like, oh, he doesn't care. Okay, run with it. And so I'd make the flyer and he's like, this is not what I was thinking at all. But it's like, he told me, go run with it. I don't care. But really, that was never the case. You really had to like be able to ask those right questions. And so learning him and learning that, I had to figure out what those were. But it's really understanding that and like really gauging that with them. Like what part of this is actually important to you? Is it the feel? Is it the, you know, the color combinations? Is it like, what are we talking about? Is it the pictures we're using? Like, what is it that's most important? And really gauging them to figure out what that is, that need. Because you're right, that first 10% is more important than I think a lot of people give credit for.
Yeah, and then we're going to talk about this working with, so we made a working with Brian doc, but it can be working with anyone. Everyone's going to have their own. But this really helped me, and I'm going to have you elaborate on it. So first, before you came in, I'm a direct person, like just with everybody. Like you've seen, I just am what I am, you know? And some people come to me and I'm super fast too. Like I think fast, I act fast, it's just how I roll. So some people are like, oh yeah, you know what, you're abrasive or whatever. And then, so Jen came in and we made a doc. It's called Working with Brian. It kind of explains how to get the best output out of me. So Jen, explain a little more, like you can probably give that more justice, like what exactly this is and what the purpose is.
Yeah. So we started actually, I made the first one I ever made. I made it with and for Trevor at Carrot. We found an example of it online. There's this lady who made it online and she had one and it was just such a cool idea. And so we kind of thought it might be a beneficial thing to implement because, you know, Carrot has a team of 50, like, you know, you guys have a bigger team too. And it's like trying to get this many people to really understand the way that he operated was harder the bigger and bigger the team got. I still think there's value in it in a small team too, though. So we started building it out that way. And then when I started working with you, it really made me remember the importance of that doc and how much it would really help bringing in another EA. So what this doc does is it really gives you a solid breakdown of like the personality of the executive. And honestly, you could do this for any team member. Like Carrot, like they have it available to like all team members to be able to do this thing.
We're doing it for our whole team too now. I'm like, you know what? I want to know this for everybody.
Yep. And it makes sense. It's like, it's a little bit more of a deep dive than like a personality test because it actually comes directly from the person, right? So it's like taking, you know, how they see themselves, like why they make decisions the way they make decisions, you know, their management style or their work style, their communication style, their communication preferences. There's just, you know, things that like, you know, little things like, you know, is like we even put in yours, I think stuff about like, you know, that, you know, profanity is not like unheard of in this company, like things like that, just to know that it's okay and how you communicate. I don't know. And it really unlocks a lot of like a new employee being able to come in and get to know you a whole lot faster.
Yeah. And you know what, even communication, it's like, if you want to ask me a question, ask me in Slack. If you want feedback, we need to talk in Zoom. If you want to show me something, send it in Loom. So it breaks down, okay, what's the situation and how do you communicate?
Yep.
You know, because I don't give me a task in Slack. Give me a task in Asana. It's like, so it breaks all that down so people don't keep sending you stuff the wrong way.
Totally. Well, and that was a huge thing. Like, I mean, going back, like thinking about like that first year that I worked for Trevor, it was interesting because we hit so many roadblocks where that kept happening, where I would send him text messages or try to call him and he would never get back to me. And I couldn't understand it because it's like everything I do is out of my phone. So why isn't he answering my text messages? And so like we had to have that communication conversation and say, hey, like, what's the best way? Why isn't this working? What's the best way for us to get these things across in a like a more speedy kind of way. And so really digging that in, like, but we had to have those conversations. So this kind of helps eliminate some of those unnecessary conversations, I guess. And they need to happen. So they are necessary conversations, but at the same time, like they don't have to be a conversation. You can just have it laid out. And this is how, and then if somebody has questions, you know, it's obvious, like they can reach out to you. You're, you know, so open and willing to like have those conversations. So if people have questions about it, being able to come to you and say, hey, like, can you break this down a little bit more? Can you tell me why you don't like to have, you know, why you want me to send you a Loom video? I don't feel comfortable that way. Can we talk about it? Like, and you're willing to be a little bit flexible there, which is pretty cool. But I think just making sure that people understand what that looks like for you and for them.
Right. And I think it empowers people too. Like, for example, one of the ones we put in there, I have a big thing. I hate people to just agree with me. And a lot of people, especially being an executive, like a lot of times you're just going to have people agree with you just because you're the boss, right? So one of the things I put in there, it's like, if you have an idea or disagree with anything, bring it up, stand firm, but also back it up. It's like, don't just say you don't like things, but if you have a valid reason, I think the best idea should win. So it's like, I'm giving you permission to keep pushing back at me, but defend it. Like, don't just say, hey, I don't like that. And basically the top idea should win. So you tell people that and they're like, oh, okay, I can actually do that then. It's not going to hurt my feelings or get me mad or whatever. It's like, it's expected. So, I mean, everyone has their own way of communicating and things. Mine is, it's like, everyone should speak up. If you got an idea, might not be the best, defend it, you know, because I'm going to poke holes in whatever you got and you should do the same for me.
Well, and that's really important too with EAs, especially because we inherently are, you know, people pleasing kind of yes men, right? Like that tends to be where most of us live because it's always been like we're servant-hearted people. It's kind of like what the role is. But realistically, that's not what most executives need or want. We need to be able to have more of a backbone to really be able to like ask harder questions, to push back a little bit and say like, no, like you shouldn't be doing this and this is why, or, you know, but most assistants really struggle with that. So that's another one of those things that I really like to dig in with them on because it needs to be a thing that you need to be able to ask those questions, that you need to be able to like, because literally every single executive needs that. There is not none of you want, you know, a yes man. It's not a thing that anybody really wants, like, but people think that's what's needed when you're an assistant.
Yeah. And it's funny, once you start telling people they can like to speak up, they do.
Yeah.
That's good. Then you get the feeling in your stomach too. You're like, oh man, like, what am I doing here? You know?
Should I have opened this door?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, but it opens for those communications because then you can grow. It's like now we're working as a team. It's not a hierarchy where a whole bunch of people just do what you say. It's like, I think it helps everyone in the company because everybody's voice is now heard and it's like everyone's moving in it's the same direction.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So anyone I recommend doing that, reach out to Jen for that 100%. Like that's a big enough game changer for me that I'm going to present to people on that kind of stuff.
Totally.
It changed my team because our team, everyone on our team is different. Like you've met a lot of them. It's like, even I'm going to have them do that as well, because I act one way. Other people like you met Philip and TJ. If I want an outcome out of them, I need to treat it differently. You know, like some people you can be direct with, some people you have to be a little softer with, you know, just because, you know what I mean?
Well, it's like dealing with kids, you know, if you have children, it's like however your kids behave, every kid is going to be different. You can't parent all children the exact same way. You know, like my 9-year-old cries about every single thing that happens. Like, so I know I can't like get after her as much as I would like her 15-year-old brother. You know what I mean? Like you have to parent different. And it's the same thing with like business working with employees.
So different question. What's one mistake that you wish you could tell your past self to avoid?
I honestly think that going like that same thing we just kind of talked about, being a yes man, like being so willing to just like put up with other people's crap and like just I look back over so much of my life, and because I'm just a servant-hearted person, I'm really good at just taking crap from people. I'm still working on it, but I think that there's definitely like that is a big one. Like really kind of like telling myself, at 25, like, hey, you don't have to just say yes because somebody asked you to do something, like really that I think that would be the biggest thing because like it's still a fight even now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You're starting to use predictive index, like with hiring and everything, right? Are you doing that?
We focus more on Myers-Briggs, but we use both, honestly. Like I see a lot of value in the predictive index a lot. It's pretty cool.
What are you seeing are good traits in somebody, like saying if real estate, so if real estate investors, well, you can tell me this, are we almost the same, like personality wise, I guess?
Yes, you're a little bit different than most, but part of that is I think most and it's true with most entrepreneurs, I think, in all honesty, but real estate investors especially are all over the place. I mean, like, I think this sounds bad, but there's almost like a, like the get rich quick people kind of like, like from like the 80s and 90s, right? Like those were like, that's who kind of went into real estate. It's like those same kind of people, but it's not about get rich quick. I know that, but I mean, it's more of like that same mentality. It's like, what's the next hustle? What can I do? And so like they get really excited about real estate investing and they're into it. But like a lot of them also have like 2 or 3 other side hustles and they're also doing, so it's like they have a really hard time staying focused. So I think that that's a big thing is like really most real estate investors tend to be like disjointed, like all over the place.
Right. That's what I see. A little bit of this like shiny object and then also very direct, I guess, not necessarily direct hustle, like
Yes.
basically a hustler. It's like a dominant person. I see a lot of real estate investors being extremely dominant, not timid, and able to work like workhorses. They're just hustling.
Yeah.
So my question is what type of personalities do you see that mesh well with that dominant real estate investor?
Obviously, like I said, most assistants tend to fall into that servant heart bucket. Like we tend to be, people that are willing to pretty much do whatever needs to be done to just get the job done. And that's obviously something we need. You need to have somebody that's willing to do the work. We see it a lot in this. And now I sound like an old lady. We see it a lot in this, like this current generation that's not wanting to do a lot of work, right? Like they don't understand this idea of like a 40-day work week. They want like, they're very entitled. And so it's like really finding that those people that actually want to work because they exist. Like even the current generation that's coming into the workforce, like they exist, they still want to work, but it's like finding the ones that do and not the ones that are like, I want to be an influencer on the internet and that's all I want to do. Like really finding people that actually want to put the work in. So that's important. I've seen it a lot of times where people have hired an assistant before me, like before I came in to help them and they were like, yeah, it's just not working and I can't figure out why. And it's really just, it wasn't a culture fit. Like they didn't find a good person that actually wanted to be an assistant, that wanted to do the hard work. So that's one thing is like somebody that's willing to be like a hard worker. Obviously like somebody that's good with confidentiality, somebody that's good with, but like I said, I think the biggest thing is it really needs, especially for a real estate investor, it really needs to be somebody that's willing to push back. It can't be somebody like you can't have like a waffle, like a marshmallow person that's willing to just like, take whatever, like, because you're never going to have the success you want in like your real estate investment business or like your life if you don't have this person pushing you back, pushing you harder. Because that's what this person is. That's what this role really should be about is like how they can, like, I've been thinking about it a lot. Like I see a lot of executives, like it's almost like they're pulling their assistant up with them. And then, but what you really need is an assistant that's kind of pulling you up with them. Like, so somebody that's not necessarily, I mean, they don't have, I mean, we don't have all the answers for like, how to run a business, but like, we know how to do the things we know how to do well. And so it's like, we know how to keep you on track so that you can make the decisions you need to do to run the business.
That does make sense. And that brings up a point too, I just thought about. I talked to some investors. I was telling people about you and they're like, I already got a VA. What are the differences? So VA's virtual assistant, EA's executive assistant. What are the differences you see there? And both are good for what to do. You know what I mean? But what do you see the difference is if somebody has a VA doing things versus an EA?
Yeah. So in all honesty, I hate the idea of like offending anybody that is like a VA and doing this job. And I'm not trying to like belittle it because I definitely see value in the role. But most VAs tend to be more like focused on like specific niches, I guess. Like, so you might hire a VA that's good with Google Ads, or you might hire a VA that, only does like follow-up calls or whatever it is. Like they tend to be more of like a niche thing. But what happens a lot of times is like, especially like the overseas VAs, like they get pulled in to do just like a bunch of admin work and they end up like answering your emails and they end up doing all this stuff. And then you complain that, your assistant isn't working out because you don't have a good the right fit. You have a person that's not really tailor-made for this role doing these kind of things. And it's like, if this person is communicating on your behalf and their communication's not where yours is, like, that's not going to work. Like, you need to make sure that this person can communicate like you, sound like you. And again, going back to that idea that like, the inbox being like a window to your soul, like one of my clients right now has like 3 different VAs doing all these different parts of his business. And I can't figure out why. And he's like bringing in an EA. And I'm like, dude, you need to like, and I had this conversation with his new EA this week. She's trying to get a gauge on where his business is. And she's looking at it and she's like, why does he have an EA answering emails? And why does he have an EA, doing all these different things that I could and should be doing? Like, what did he bring me in for if he's got this person doing? And I was like, I've been trying to figure out this whole time, but he's so tied to this idea that he's trying to automate his business. He kind of delegated out too much. And I think really being able to pull that back and say like, okay, this person can do all this, like be a hub to do all these things. But that's the only way that we can really gauge and understand your business is to be in it fully. So, like you were talking about, going to the meetings with you, like shadowing you, listening to what you're doing, hearing what's important to you, reviewing your inbox, managing your calendar, managing your travel, managing communication for you. Like, if you say like, we're in a meeting together and you say, yeah, after this call, I need to contact my lawyer. Like, if you don't write, I know for me, if I don't write something like that down, I'm not going to do it. And so if Ashley, my assistant, she will reach out to me and be like, hey, Jen, did you call the lawyer after that call? And oh, you're right. I totally forgot. But that's why she's there. Like, that's what she does. She saves my life every single day, because if she was not sitting in telling me to follow up or following up for me, it wouldn't happen.
And you're right too. I kind of look at it as, because I have VAs work with us and now an EA. It's like VAs are task oriented is kind of how I see it. It's like VAs task oriented. I give detailed instructions and I get back exactly what I asked for, versus an EA is more like not really task oriented. It's like, hey, here's my life. Like, here's all the stuff and kind of figure it out for me. Not necessarily figure it out for me, but like organize it and like help me do my job better. So you don't have to give as much. You have to give direction, but it's not direction like I have to give with overseas people, which is like step-by-step direction.
Yes. And they won't do more most of the time. That's not always true. You have like those like unicorn VAs that come in and seem to somehow just be really good at it. But that's not the norm. And I think you're totally right. It definitely is like a step-by-step thing. And they're not gonna see a gap and say like, I should take that like proactive next step and do that. Like, this is where he told me to stop, so I'm gonna stop. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. But an EA will see like the grander scope, and they will, take things to the next, like, 2 to 3 steps further out. They will make processes around these things. They'll say like, I've done this 2 or 3 times. We don't have a process for it. I need to make that. Or, those kind of things that need to happen to really influence and impact the business long-term.
So basically, anyone listening, if you don't have an EA and you're in business, it's probably worth having a conversation with Jen to see if it's even a fit. Jen, what all do you offer for people? Just break that down real quick.
Yeah. So we do one-on-one coaching, and really it's like 2-on-1 coaching usually. We do coaching where we have like, and it can look however you want. Like I said, I don't really believe in the whole cookie cutter thing. Everybody learns differently. So we do coaching where I'll do coaching sessions with the assistant and the executive, and or we do both ways. So I coach a lot. Like, I had some of my coaching students where it was just the executive for like 2 to 3 months while they were looking for an EA. And I walked them through the process and helped them figure that out and get that all done. So I coach them through, like kind of implementing things and strategies before an EA comes in. And then we do like coaching with the assistant. Really, like, we focus solidly on like onboarding. This is the first things that your EA should be doing, these like processes that need to be implemented right away to help the most success happen from the beginning. And we focus there, but then we also have like, coaching a ways out. So we do as long out, and we don't generally like say you have to stick to us any particular amount of time. It's like whatever makes the most sense for our situation. So if you want to do like one of my students, I've been coaching her for 1.5 years and we still connect and she's fantastic. But then some of my clients, they go for like 6 months and they feel like they got enough out of us and they're ready to move on, and that's cool. So whatever kind of works for you guys. So that's like the big thing. That's my favorite part of it, really being able to like dig into the nitty gritty with the EAs, with the executives, and really teaching them what I know. And then the next thing that we also do is we do recruiting. So we go through and we do like a very like, we kind of have it 2-sided where we do like very hands-on. We do all the work pretty much, except for the final step where we send you candidates and say like, these are our top 3 favorites and you interview them with me. I have a recruiter on my team. That's her job solely. And she focuses on, vetting candidates and going through and doing all like the pre-work. We have a really solid process behind it, and we could totally walk you through that. But that's that. And then we also have like less of a done for you, where we kind of share our process with you and walk you through it, and you do all the work. So that's pretty much like the main things. And then, like Brian said, we do sometimes do a like an interim EA support thing where I can jump in and help out with an executive while they're looking for an EA. But it's like the bandwidth is obviously really limited. So I generally only support like one person like that at a time. So if that's something you're interested in, there's like a little bit of a wait list for it, but we can totally talk about that too.
So basically what I'm hearing is, if somebody out there is always like, you know what, I really need help, I don't know what an assistant would do, they hit you up and you help them figure it out, and then you can help them. It's like, hey, you know what? We are a right fit, and I can coach you, or we can do more of the white glove service, whatever it is,
Yeah, definitely. And they could we have our through our Calendly thing, we have where you can set up a discovery call with us. You can just reach out through our website. It's thekickassistant.com. You can just reach out through our website, set up for a discovery call, and we'll set up a time to connect and talk you through whatever we can help you with.
All right, cool. And you said thekickassistant.com.
Mm-hmm. All one word.
Is that a spinoff, like the kick ass assistant?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the idea behind it. It was just everybody kept saying, like, you're a kick-ass assistant. And it just kind of flowed into one word. A guy that I worked with at Carrot actually coined it. I feel like I should say that so that he knows that I still tell him it was his idea.
Give him credit, right?
Yeah, that's right, Josh. Good job, Josh. Thanks.
That's cool.
He suggested it. And so yeah, it kind of stemmed from that.
Yeah. So anybody that is doing too much, the Jen's who I went to. So I recommend hit up Jen. She can help you out. She's a good person too. She's not gonna tell you to work with her if she doesn't think it's a fit. So hit her up, book a call. Hey Jen, last question. What's your top book you'd recommend for people?
For executives, I would say Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. You're going to see so much in there that is just really beneficial for you. There's like sections literally on cloning yourself that talk about hiring an EA. So that would be that one. And then for assistants, that book is also really good. But there's a book called The Leader Assistant by Jeremy Burroughs. It's a really good one. That's like the Bible for EA work.
Cool. Go check those out, guys. Hey, Jen, well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you.
Yep, it was fun. Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. Hey, everyone, thanks for listening. Until next time, get out there, crush it, close some deals. We'll see you guys.